The stars had always been silent. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. In the year 2087, they got their answer. They were not alone. And what found them was hungry. Admiral Tejo stood on the bridge of the orbital station Phoenix, his hands clasped behind his back. He was 63 years old, with gray hair cut short and a face carved by decades of military service. He had lost his wife and daughter during the Mars riots 15 years ago. Since then, the stars held no beauty for him. They were just cold lights in an empty void. The young officer at the sensor station turned pale. Her voice shook when she spoke. "Sir, you need to see this." Tejo walked over and looked at the screen. At first, he did not understand what he was seeing. The display showed thousands of red dots moving in formation. They were coming from beyond Neptune, moving fast toward the inner solar system. "How many?" he asked quietly. The officer checked her readings 3 times before answering. 9,500 vessels, sir. Maybe more. Tejo felt his heart stop for just a moment. Earth's entire defense fleet was less than 300 ships. Most of them were small patrol craft. Against an armada of this size, they would last minutes, far across the galaxy. High Commander Drek stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. He was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 eyes that never blinked. His species, the Valorans, had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed 200 different civilizations. Not once had they faced real resistance. Drek looked at the blue and green, planted on his view screen. Earth. A beautiful world rich with water and metals. According to his scouts, it was inhabited by primitive bipeds who had barely learned to leave their own planet. They called themselves humans. He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. This would not be a war. It would be a harvest. "Send the message," he ordered. On Earth, every screen and speaker came alive with the same broadcast. A face appeared, alien and terrifying. High Commander Drek spoke in a voice that was cold and certain. "Creatures of this world, I am High Commander Drek of the Valoran Empire. Your planet now belongs to us. You have one choice. Surrender, and some of you will be allowed to live as servants. Resist, and every living thing on your world will be erased. You have 72 hours. Choose wisely." The message ended. Silence fell across the world. In Seoul, a young scientist named Yuna watched the broadcast from her laboratory. She was 35, with sharp eyes and quick hands. She had spent 10 years working on electromagnetic pulse technology for the military. Everyone had called her research useless. A waste of money. Who would Earth ever fight? Now she understood why she had been working so hard. Some part of her had always known this day would come. She picked up her phone and called Admiral Tejo directly. "Admiral, I have an idea. But I need access to every satellite in Earth's orbit." Tejo listened to her plan. It was insane. It might not work. But it was the only plan they had. "Do it," he said. Across the world, humanity reacted. Some people panicked. Some prayed. Some tried to run, though there was nowhere to go. But most did something the Valorans did not expect. They got angry. Captain Juan was refueling his ship when the broadcast came. The Black Crane was an experimental stealth destroyer, small and fast, built for missions that officially did not exist. Juan was 40 years old, calm under pressure, and very good at destroying things. He gathered his crew of 12. You all saw the message. "Command is giving us new orders. We are going to hit them first." His pilot, a young man named June, raised an eyebrow. "Sir, there are almost 10,000 of them." "Then we better not miss," Juan replied. The hours passed. Earth prepared for war. Missiles were armed. Soldiers were deployed. Families said goodbye. Children were held close. Old enemies became allies. Every nation, every army, every person with a weapon turned their eyes to the sky. Admiral Tejo broadcast his own message to the fleet. His voice was steady and strong. "I will not lie to you. The enemy is powerful. They have conquered worlds. They have destroyed civilizations. They think we are weak. They think we are primitive. They think we will kneel. He paused. They are wrong. This is our home. This is our sky, and we will make them bleed for every inch of it. The Valoran fleet crossed the orbit of Mars. High Commander Drek watched the tiny blue planet grow larger on his screen. His officers reported that human military activity had increased. Small ships were moving into defensive positions. Ground forces were mobilizing. Drek laughed. Primitive weapons. Primitive tactics. They are children playing at war. His second officer studied the sensor data. Commander, their satellite network is behaving strangely. There is unusual electromagnetic activity. Drek waved his hand dismissively. Communication signals. Panic. They are probably begging their gods for help. Ignore it. He leaned forward in his command chair. Send the first wave. 2,000 ships. Crush their orbital defenses and prepare for ground invasion. 2,000 Valoran warships broke formation and accelerated toward Earth. Their hulls were black and angular, bristling with weapons. Each ship carried enough firepower to level a city. Together, they could burn the planet clean. On the Phoenix station, Tejo watched them come. His hands were steady. His heart was calm. He had accepted death long ago. But before he died, he would show these invaders what humanity could do. He opened a channel to Dr. Yuna. Are we ready? Her voice came back, tight with tension. The satellite network is synchronized. EMP grid is charged. Waiting for your order. Tejo looked at the approaching fleet. 2,000 ships, each one larger than anything Earth had ever built. They expected no resistance. They expected frightened animals waiting for slaughter. He smiled grimly. Let them get closer. I want them to see our faces before we blind them. The first wave entered weapon range. The Valoran commanders prepared to fire. On Earth, 7 billion people held their breath. Admiral Tejo spoke one word. Now. The sky lit up with invisible fire. Every satellite in Earth's orbit activated at the same moment. They released a massive wave of electromagnetic energy that spread outward like ripples in a pond. The wave was invisible to the naked eye. But to the Valoran ships, it was death. 400 warships went dark instantly. Their lights flickered and died. Their engines stopped. Their weapons systems crashed. The great vessels that had conquered worlds became nothing more than floating metal coffins, drifting silent and blind in the void. On the bridge of a Valoran cruiser, Commander Voss watched his screens fill with static. What is happening? Report. No one could answer. His crew fumbled with dead controls. Outside his window, he could see other ships spinning helplessly, their crews trapped inside. Some collided with each other. Others drifted toward Earth's gravity well, pulled down toward a fiery death in the atmosphere. No one had ever attacked them like this. Their shields could stop any weapon. Their armor could survive any impact. But this strange pulse had ignored their defenses completely. It had reached inside their ships and killed them from within. High Commander Drek received the reports on his flagship. 400 ships, disabled or destroyed in seconds. He stared at the data, unable to believe what he was seeing. Impossible, he whispered. They are primitives. How is this possible? His second officer spoke carefully. Sir, it appears to be some kind of electromagnetic attack. Our shields were designed to repel energy weapons, not absorb wide-spectrum interference. Our systems were not prepared for this. Drek slammed his fist against his chair. Then prepare them. Adapt. We are the Valoran Empire. We do not lose to animals. While the Valorans struggled to understand what had happened, Earth struck again. Lieutenant Sora had been waiting for this moment. She was 28 years old, the best pilot in the 7th Interceptor Squadron. Her call sign was Ghost. She had earned it by flying missions that no one else could survive. Her squadron of 40, small fighters launched from a hidden base on the moon. They moved fast and quiet, using the debris from the disabled Valoran ships as cover. Stay tight, Sora said through her radio. Pick your targets. One pass, maximum damage, then we disappear. The Valoran ships that had survived the EMP were still trying to reboot their systems. Their sensors were scrambled. Their communications were chaos. They never saw the human fighters coming. Sora's squadron tore through them like wolves through sheep. Their weapons were smaller than Valoran guns, but they knew where to aim. Engine ports, sensor arrays, bridge windows. They hit weak points that the Valorans did not even know they had. 89 Valoran ships died in 7 minutes. Sora pulled her fighter in two. Sharp turn. Dodging return fire from a cruiser that had finally gotten its weapons online, she saw one of her pilots take a direct hit and explode into fragments. Another one followed moments later. Squadron, break off. Mission complete. Return to base. Surviving fighters scattered into the darkness. Behind them, the Valoran first wave was in ruins. Nearly 500 ships destroyed or disabled. It was the first real defeat the Empire had ever suffered. On the Eternal Dominion, High Commander Drek watched the disaster unfold. His blue skin had turned pale. His 4 eyes burned with rage and something else. Something he had never felt before. Fear, but fear made him angry. And anger made him dangerous. Send everything, he ordered. All remaining ships, overwhelm them with numbers. Burn that planet to ash. The Valoran armada moved. 3,000 ships in the second wave. Then another 2,000. Then another. They abandoned caution. They abandoned strategy. They wanted only one thing now. Revenge. On Earth, Admiral Tejo watched the enemy fleet advance. He had hoped to buy more time. But the Valorans were coming fast, and they were coming angry. The EMP grid is recharging, Dr. Yuna reported. It will be another 6 hours before we can fire again. We do not have 6 hours, Tejo replied. Launch all available ships. Ground forces, prepare for invasion. This is going to get ugly. In Seoul, Sergeant Kwan was organizing his soldiers when the first Valoran dropships broke through the clouds. They were huge black shapes that blocked out the sun. They landed in the city center, crushing buildings under their weight. Kwan had fought in 3 wars. He had seen death and horror. But nothing had prepared him for what came out of those ships. The Valoran soldiers were tall and fast. With hard shells covering their bodies like armor, they carried weapons that fired bolts of green energy. Where the bolts hit, things burned. Open fire! Kwan shouted. His soldiers attacked with everything they had. Rifles, grenades, rockets. The Valoran armor was strong, but it was not invincible. Human bullets found gaps. Human explosives cracked shells. Valoran soldiers fell, but more kept coming. The battle for Seoul became a nightmare of fire and blood. Buildings collapsed. Streets burned. Soldiers on both sides died by the hundreds. Kwan led his unit through the chaos, fighting from block to block, never giving ground without a cost. In Tokyo, a specialist named Nari led a team of resistance fighters through underground tunnels. She was 31, quiet and patient, trained in ways of killing that did not require heavy weapons. She had a rifle, a knife, and a mind full of terrible ideas. Her team emerged behind a Valoran patrol. They attacked in silence, striking before the aliens could raise their weapons. Nari put her knife through the neck of a Valoran officer, finding the soft spot between his helmet and collar. The alien fell, surprised that something so small could end his life. Across the world, similar scenes played out. Humans fought in cities and forests, in deserts and mountains. They used tanks and aircraft, bombs and bullets. When the weapons ran out, they used rocks and fire in their bare hands. The Valorans had expected surrender. They had expected fear. They found neither. Instead, they found a species that would rather die than kneel. A species that treated war not as something to avoid, but as something to master. A species that had spent its entire history fighting itself and was very, very good at it. In orbit, the black crane moved through the chaos like a shark through bloody water. Captain Wan watched the battle unfold on his screens. His ship was too small to fight the enemy fleet directly, but he had other plans. June, take us toward the flagship. Nice and slow. Stay in the debris field. His pilot nodded. "Sir, if they detect us, we will not survive." Juan smiled. "Then let us make sure they do not detect us." The black crane crept closer to the Eternal Dominion. In its cargo hold sat a single nuclear warhead, armed and waiting, far below, Earth burned. But Earth also fought, and with every hour that passed, the Valorans learned a terrible truth. Conquering humanity would cost far more than they ever imagined. The black crane was invisible. That was the whole point. Captain Juan sat in his chair and watched the Valoran flagship grow larger through his window. The Eternal Dominion was massive, bigger than a city, surrounded by thousands of smaller ships. It was the heart of the enemy fleet, and he was going to stop that heart forever. "Distance to target?" he asked quietly. 12 kilometers, June replied. His hands were steady on the controls, but his voice was tight. "Their sensors are still not detecting us. The debris and radiation from the battle is covering our approach." Juan nodded. Their stealth technology was good, but it was not magic. They had maybe 3 minutes before someone noticed them. 3 minutes to change the course of the war. Arm the warhead. Open the cargo bay doors. The nuclear device was not large. It looked almost harmless, sitting in its cradle. But it held enough power to crack a small moon. Juan had planned to live through this mission. He had hoped to deploy the weapon and escape. But looking at the enemy fleet surrounding them, he knew the truth. This was a one-way trip. He opened a channel to his crew. "You all know what we are about to do. Anyone who wants to leave, the escape pods are ready. No one will think less of you." No one moved. 12 people, all ready to die. June smiled slightly. "Sir, we came here to make history. Let us finish the job." Juan felt something warm in his chest. Pride. Love. Gratitude. He nodded once, then turned back to his screens. "Take us in. Full speed. Aim for the hangar bay." The black crane shot forward like an arrow. Alarms screamed across the Valoran flagship as sensors finally detected the small ship. Weapons turned toward them. Green fire filled the space around them, but they were too close. Too fast. The black crane crashed through the hangar bay doors and exploded. The nuclear warhead detonated inside the Eternal Dominion. For a moment, there was a second sun in orbit around Earth. The flagship broke apart. Massive sections spinning away in flames. The explosion caught other ships too close to escape. 100 vessels. 200. 500. When the light faded, over 1,000 Valoran ships were destroyed or burning. High Commander Drek survived. He had been in a command shuttle, inspecting damage to a nearby cruiser. He watched his flagship die from a distance, his face frozen in shock. Captain Juan and his crew became the first martyrs of the war. Their names would be carved in stone on every continent. Their sacrifice would be remembered for 1,000 years. But the war was not over yet. On the ground, General Daesung was fighting a different kind of battle. He was 55 years old, a tactical genius who had studied every war in human history. He knew something the Valorans did not understand. Humans were the masters of making their enemies suffer. He called his strategy the Scorched Protocol. Every terrain feature became a weapon. Bridges were blown when enemy tanks crossed them. Buildings were collapsed onto advancing troops. Water supplies were poisoned. Roads were filled with traps. The Valorans found death waiting around every corner in the forests of Brazil. Human soldiers used fire to create walls of flame that cooked Valoran units alive inside their armor. In the mountains of Switzerland, avalanches buried entire battalions. In the deserts of Arabia, sandstorms were seeded with metal fragments that tore through alien ties and joints. The Valorans had never faced anything like this. Their previous conquests had been clean and simple. Land, kill, occupy. But humans did not let them occupy anything. Every street was a battleground. Every building was a fortress. Every shadow held a killer. Specialist Nari became famous in those dark days. She operated in the ruins of Tokyo with a team of 12 fighters. They had no heavy weapons, no air support, no reinforcements. They had only their training and their hatred taught her team to hunt. They learned where Valoran armor was weakest. They learned how to move without sound. They learned how to kill without being seen. One night her team destroyed an entire Valoran battalion. 200 soldiers wiped out by 12 humans using knives and explosives. The Valorans found the bodies of their comrades arranged in a pattern. A message written in blood. It said, "You are not welcome here." While the ground war raged, Dr. Yuna was working on something even more dangerous than bombs. She had captured a Valoran computer core from a crashed ship. For 3 days, she did not sleep. She studied the alien code, learned its patterns, found its weaknesses. Then she created a virus. The virus was beautiful in its simplicity. It did not destroy Valoran systems. It confused them. It made ships see enemies where there were none. It made weapons fire at friendly targets. It made navigation systems lead vessels into asteroids and planets. She called it the Whisper Admiral. Tejo approved its deployment immediately. Send it through their communication network. Let it spread. The Whisper moved through the Valoran fleet like a disease. At first, the aliens did not notice. Then strange things began to happen. A cruiser opened fire on its escort ships. A carrier flew directly into Earth's atmosphere and burned. A battleship's life support system shut down, suffocating everyone aboard. The Valoran commanders screamed at each other through their radios, each one accusing the others of betrayal. Trust collapsed. Units stopped cooperating. The great armada that had arrived with such confidence began to tear itself apart. By the end of the 3rd week, over 6,000 Valoran ships were destroyed. High Commander Drek finally understood the truth. This invasion was a disaster. His fleet was broken. His soldiers were dying. His technology was failing. He had come to Earth expecting to crush insects. Instead, he had awakened something terrible. He gave the order that no Valoran commander had ever given before. Retreat. All ships retreat. Fall back to rally point beyond Mars. The surviving Valoran vessels turned and ran. They fled past the moon, past the orbital stations, past the debris of their fallen comrades. They ran like animals escaping a predator. On the Phoenix station, Admiral Tejo watched them go. His face was gray with exhaustion. He had not slept in 4 days. Around him, his officers celebrated, crying and hugging each other. But Tejo did not celebrate. He remembered Captain Wan and his crew. He remembered the soldiers who died in Seoul and Tokyo and 100 other cities. He remembered the children who would never see their parents again. He opened a channel to all human forces. His voice was cold and hard. They came to our home. They killed our people. They thought we would be easy prey. He paused, letting his words sink in. Now they run. But we are not finished with them. Not even close. He looked at his tactical display. The Valoran fleet was fast, but human ships were faster. And humans had learned something important about themselves in these dark weeks. They were very good at hunting. All available ships pursue the enemy. They wanted to harvest us. His eyes burned with cold fire. Now we harvest them. The hunt had begun. The Valorans had never been preyed before. They did not know how it felt to run. They did not know the terror of looking over their shoulder and seeing death coming closer. They learned quickly. Commander Yunbai led the pursuit fleet. She was 42 years old, sharp and ruthless, with a reputation for impossible victories. Before the war, she had commanded a small patrol squadron near Jupiter. Now she commanded everything humanity could put into space. Her fleet was strange and ugly. Human destroyers flew beside captured Valoran cruisers. Cargo ships had been fitted with weapons. Mining vessels carried bombs. It was not a proper navy. It was a mob of angry survivors hungry for revenge. Enemy fleet is 12 hours ahead of us, her sensor officer reported. They are heading for a rally point beyond Mars. Yunbai studied the star charts. The Valorans were running in a straight line, desperate to escape. They were not thinking about ambushes. They were not thinking about tactics. They were only thinking about survival. Signal all ships, she ordered. We push the engines to maximum. No rest. No stopping. We catch them before they can regroup. The pursuit fleet accelerated into the darkness between worlds, on a crippled observation station near the asteroid belt. Private Wu Jin was fighting to stay alive. He was 23 years old, just a communications technician. He had never expected to become a soldier. But the war had made soldiers of everyone. His station had been hit during the first wave of attacks. Most of the crew was dead. The life support was failing. He had maybe 6 hours of oxygen left, but his radio still worked, and he had been listening. Through the static, he had picked up Valoran transmissions. They were talking about a resupply point, a hidden depot where their surviving ships would refuel and repair before making the long journey home. Wu Jin did not understand their language, but the station's computer had managed to translate parts of the message. He had coordinates. He had a chance to matter. With shaking hands, he broadcast the information on every human frequency. "This is Private Wu Jin, Station Delta 7. I have enemy resupply coordinates." "Repeat. I have enemy resupply coordinates. Commander Yun Bai." Received the transmission. She looked at the coordinates, then at her tactical display. The Valoran supply depot was hidden behind a large asteroid. If she adjusted course now, she could reach it before the enemy fleet arrived. "Change heading," she ordered. "We are going to be waiting for them when they get hungry." Wu Jin died 4 hours later when his oxygen ran out. He died alone in the dark, surrounded by the bodies of his friends. But he died knowing that he had helped. His name would be added to the list of heroes. His family would know that their son had mattered. The human fleet reached the supply depot first. They destroyed it in minutes, blowing the fuel tanks and ammunition stores into clouds of glowing debris. Then they hid among the asteroids and waited. The Valoran survivors arrived, expecting safety. They found fire instead. EU Unbai's fleet attacked from all directions. Human ships erupted from behind rocks and wreckage, weapons blazing. The Valorans, exhausted and desperate, fought back with failing systems and broken crews. It was not a battle. It was a massacre. Lieutenant Sora was there, flying a new fighter to replace the one she had lost. Her squadron had been reduced to 15 pilots. They were all tired. They were all wounded in some way, but they flew like demons, dancing through the chaos, killing everything they touched. A Valoran carrier tried to break through the ambush. It was one of their largest surviving ships, carrying thousands of soldiers and dozens of fighters. If it escaped, it could reach Valoran space and call for reinforcements. Sora saw it running. She calculated the angles. Her weapons were almost empty. Her fuel was almost gone. She would not be able to catch the carrier and return to the fleet, but she could catch it. She opened a channel to Commander Yun Bai. "Commander, I am pursuing the carrier. I will not be coming back." Yun Bai's voice was rough. "Sora, no. Let it go. We have won enough today. If that ship escapes, they will send more. I did not watch my friends die just to let them come back for another try." Sora pushed her engines to maximum. "Tell my family I love them. Tell them I chose this." She cut the channel before Yun Bai could respond. The Valoran carrier detected her approach. It launched fighters to intercept. Sora flew through them like wind through leaves, dodging and weaving, taking hits that would have killed any other pilot. Her ship was burning when she reached the carrier. Her cockpit was filled with smoke. She aimed for the engine core and did not slow down. The explosion lit up the asteroid, field like a star being born. Back on Earth, the ground war was ending. The Valoran soldiers who remained were surrounded and cut off. Some surrendered. Most did not. They had been taught that surrender was shame, so they died instead. Specialist Nari captured one of the few Valoran officers who chose to live. His name was Commander Veth, a mid-level commander who had seen the entire disaster unfold. Nari brought him to General Daesung for questioning. The interrogation lasted 3 days. At first, Veth was silent. Then Nari started asking questions in ways that made silence impossible. She was not cruel. She was patient. She explained, very calmly, exactly what would happen if he did not talk. He talked. Veth revealed everything. The size of the Valoran Empire. the number of systems they controlled, the civilizations they had destroyed, and most importantly, the secret that shook every human who heard it in 2,000 years of conquest. No species had ever fought back. The Valorans had conquered 200 worlds. Every single one had surrendered. Every single one had accepted their fate, until Earth. General Desong recorded Veith's confession. Then he broadcasted on every frequency, human and Valoran alike. The message was simple. You thought we were like the others. You thought we would kneel? You were wrong. We are humanity. We do not kneel. We do not surrender. We do not forgive. And we are just getting started. Across the shattered remains of the Valoran fleet, survivors heard the broadcast. They heard one of their own commanders admitting that humans were different, that humans were dangerous, that humans might be the worst thing the Empire had ever encountered. High Commander Drek heard it too. He was on a damaged cruiser, one of the few ships still capable of faster-than-light travel. Around him, his once mighty armada had been reduced to scattered survivors. He gave the order to run, to flee to the edges of the solar system and jump to hyperspace, to go home and warn the Empire. Of the 9,500 ships that had come to conquer Earth, only 17 were capable of making that jump. 17 ships. That was all that remained of the greatest invasion fleet in Valoran history. They fled into the darkness, carrying stories that would haunt the Empire forever. The journey home took 3 months. 3 months of silence and fear and shame. The 17 surviving ships limped through hyperspace with damaged engines and broken crews. They carried fewer than 4,000 soldiers out of the 2 million who had left. Captain Kel commanded one of the surviving vessels. He was young for a Valoran officer, only 80 years old, with pale blue skin that had turned gray from stress. He had seen things in the Sol system that he would never forget, things that woke him screaming in the middle of the night. He had watched humans crash their own ships into Valoran cruisers. He had seen them charge into certain death with smiles on their faces. He had witnessed soldiers fight with knives and rocks after their weapons were empty. He had seen a species that treated death not as something to fear, but as something to use. The humans had a word for it: sacrifice. The Valorans had no such word. They had never needed one. On the Valoran homeworld, the High Council waited for news. Elder Veth was the oldest member, nearly 600 years old, wise and patient. He had sent the invasion fleet with complete confidence. Earth was supposed to be easy, a primitive world, a quick harvest. When the first reports came back, he thought there was a mistake. Ships lost? Thousands of them. Impossible. The Empire had never lost more than a handful of vessels in any campaign. He demanded clarification. The clarification came in the form of 17. Broken ships dropping out of hyperspace above the capital. 17 ships, where 9,500 had departed. Elder Veth watched from his tower as the survivors limped into orbit. Emergency crews rushed to help them dock. Medical teams prepared for wounded. The entire planet held its breath. Captain Kel was brought before the High Council. He stood alone in the center of the Great Chamber, surrounded by the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. His uniform was torn. His body was thin from months of poor rations. His eyes were empty. Report, Elder Veth commanded. Tell us what happened. Kel was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke 2 words. They fought. The council exchanged confused glances. Of course the humans fought. All species resisted at first. It never mattered, explained Veth demanded. How did primitives destroy our armada? Kel laughed. It was not a happy sound. Primitives. That is what we called them. We said they were children, animals, insects. He shook his head. We were fools. He told them everything. The electromagnetic pulse that killed their ships. The virus that turned their technology against them. The ground war that became a nightmare of traps and ambushes. The suicide attacks and the guerrilla fighters and the relentless pursuit. They used their own planet as a weapon, Kel said. They collapsed mountains on our troops. They set their forests on fire. They poisoned their own water rather than let us drink it. They destroyed their own cities rather than let us take them. The council listened in growing horror. When our soldiers surrounded their fighters, the humans did not surrender. They detonated explosives strapped to their own bodies. When we captured their pilots, they flew their ships into our engines. When we cornered them with no weapons left, they attacked us with tools and rocks and their bare hands. Kel's voice dropped to a whisper. They do not fear death. They use it. They welcome it. Death is their ally, not their enemy. He looked up at the council, his eyes haunted. We thought we were the hunters. We were wrong. They are the hunters. We were just too stupid to see it until they had already started killing us. Elder Veth leaned forward. What of High Commander Drek? Dead, Kel replied. His ship was caught in the pursuit. The humans ran him down and destroyed him. They would not let him escape. He paused. They wanted him specifically. They remembered what he said in his broadcast. They made sure he died knowing he was wrong about everything. The council chamber was silent. 2,000 years of conquest. 200 worlds, and never once had they faced anything like this. What do you recommend? Veth asked finally. Should we send more ships? A larger fleet? Kel stared at him like he was insane. Send more ships? Did you not hear me? We sent 9,500 vessels. We sent 2 million soldiers. We sent the greatest armada in the history of our empire. His voice cracked. 17 ships came back. 4,000 soldiers came back, and you want to send more? He stepped closer to the council, ignoring the guards who moved to stop him. Listen to me carefully. These humans are not like anything we have ever encountered. They are not prey. They are not servants. They are killers. They have spent their entire existence fighting each other, and they are masters of war in ways we cannot imagine. He pointed toward the window, toward the stars beyond. Right now, they are building ships with our technology. They are studying our weapons. They are learning how to reach other stars. And when they come for us, and they will come, we will not be able to stop them. The council argued for 7 days. Some wanted revenge. Some wanted negotiation. Some wanted to pretend it never happened. In the end, Elder Veth made the decision that would shape the future of the galaxy. He declared Earth forbidden. The coordinates of the Sol system were erased from every star. Chart, every navigation computer, every historical record. Ships were forbidden to travel within 100 light-years of that cursed sun. The word human was removed from official documents. A warning was broadcast to every corner of the Empire and beyond. It reached other civilizations, other species, who had heard rumors of the Valoran defeat. The message was simple. There is a world in the outer reaches of the galaxy, the third planet of a yellow star. It is inhabited by a species that cannot be conquered. They cannot be intimidated. They cannot be reasoned with. They know only war, and they are better at it than any species we have ever encountered. Under no circumstances should any vessel approach this system. The creatures there are not prey. They are predators, and once awakened, they do not stop. The message spread across the stars. Species who had lived in fear of the Valorans heard it and felt something strange. Hope. If one world could stand against the Empire, perhaps others could too. On Earth, Admiral Tejo stood before a memorial wall. Carved into the stone were thousands of names. Captain Wan, Lieutenant Sora, Private Wu Jin, and countless others who had given everything. Dr. Yuna stood beside him, holding a tablet. On the screen was the Valoran warning, translated by their captured technology. They are afraid of us, she said quietly. The entire galaxy is going to know what happened here. Tejo nodded. Good. Let them know. Let them all know what happens when you come to our home uninvited. He looked up at the sky, where construction drones were building new orbital stations. Humanity was already preparing for the next threat. They had learned that the universe was dangerous. But they had also learned something about themselves. They were dangerous too, somewhere out there. Among the countless stars, other civilizations were receiving the Valoran warning. They were learning a new word, a word that would spread from world to world, system to system, until every intelligent species in the galaxy knew it, human, and they were learning to be afraid.